let's find your brief so I can do that. So Sam talking with Renee Giarrusso for our podcast, Better People, Better Business. I'll get started in a sec. Thank you, Samantha. Good morning, everybody. It's morning here. I'm over in the lovely city of Perth when I'm doing this recording. And today I have the absolute pleasure to be talking to Renee Giarrusso. I've known Renee for a few years now, and she's an amazing individual doing amazing work. Morning, Renee.
Morning. Looking forward to this, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been very much looking forward to it too. So just to give you all a bit of a brief introduction to who Renee is. She's the CEO and founder of RG Dynamics. She's a speaker, does international award-winning author, written a few books, and we'll happily, talk about those today, I hope, so you can see some of those. Facilitator, trainer, mentor, professional coach. Renee is also a highly sought after communication, leadership, and mindset expert. She's a speaker, does a lot of speaking, absolutely fantastic. If you have an event, you need somebody to get the team thinking and to get the team a bit animated. 3-time award-winning author, facilitator, trainer, coach, works with leaders, teams, and organizations across the whole gamut to energize mindset and accelerate communication and leadership to lift collaboration, connection, and workplace performance. So just as you're thinking about this, if you want to do some work with Renee, just be mindful she can do it from small to big. Has that capacity and has done that with other clients. She founded RG Dynamics in 2006 with her sole purpose being able to make workplaces exceptional places to work, something that is near and dear to my heart as well. Mm-hmm. She is obsessed with seeing people reach their full potential and believes we are all limitless. That's something we will ask her about soon. For over 25 years, she has worked with hundreds of organizations across 24 industries and has a strong reputation of passionately delivering results and is known as a dynamic, relatable, thought-provoking, and dedicated. Renee's diverse experience is mirrored in the network and clients that she works with. Some of those clients include GS1, Metricon Homes, Coles, SPC, KB Foods, Arup, Workskill Australia, Metro Trains, Mazda, William Adams, George Weston Foods, and Intrax Engineering. I'm sure you have heard of at least one of those, if not the handful. She is the host of the Limitless Leaders podcast and regularly contributes her message on radio, TV, and media publications. Published 3 books, including Limitless Leadership and Leaders of Influence Anthology. In 21, after publishing the international award-winning book Gift Mindset, unwrap the 12 gifts to lead and live a life of purpose, connection, and contribution. In her spare time, Renee loves to cook. I have heard tales of this cooking. Entertain, which I think you'll get when you hear our conversation, absolutely part of her. Travel, and to do yoga. There's a lot there, and there's a lot in this person. She's an amazing individual. Let's get cracking. Like I said, it's an absolute delight to be able to talk to you, Renee. I think we met quite a few years ago through a common friend, maybe Miss Jane Anderson, I think, or one of those characters. And
probably about 6.5 years ago, I worked out.
Yeah, wow. Time zips on by, doesn't it?
It does.
And when I first met Renee, the first thing that struck me was just bundle of energy full of life, and not too much slows her down or stops her, and life throws many curveballs, but the freight train moves straight through them over time. So it's great. So Renee, when we have these chats, the first question I ask people, just to get a interesting frame from the genius you have and the work you do and the years of experience that you've got inside it. I still don't believe it's 25. I think you're sort of making that longer because you look, there's no way you've been working 25 years, but it's a whole other conversation.
Oh, it's actually longer.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Some of us wear a little bit more hardy than, some of us look, leave it alone, Andrew. I'm really interested, Dave, like the podcast is about better people, better business. When I say that, what does that mean to you in amongst all the work? And I'm going to put any more boundaries on it than just when you hear those words, how does that transfer into the world you live in and the work you do with your clients?
Yeah, better people, better business. The thing that comes to mind is I think it's all about people. I've always had a bit of a mantra, people before process, before progress. And better, I think if we're being better and we're being different and we're tapping into the essence of who we are, you can't help but have success in life, in business, in teams and organisations.
Mm.
And I think it's an ongoing journey. That's where Limitless sort of comes in. We need to, I'm a big believer in learning, unlearning and relearning.
Mm.
And I think being better is about continually evolving and investing in the time and headspace to do that.
Mm. Excuse me. So yeah, the better thing is a deliberate play, because one of the things that I've certainly seen through my work and the people I get to meet and the industries I get to play with often have this bias toward best practice and best in class and best. And it's always been a really interesting challenge, I think, because for me, best is a ceiling, and once you get there, what's next?
Yeah, that's
better,
right.
Better's a ladder that just never really ends.
I love that. And it's the incrementality of being better. And you know, when you're listening or watching this, being better to each person, it's in the eye of the beholder. So it doesn't have to be something big. It could just be a change of a habit or a mindset. It could be something that's happened personally that helps you become a better person so you can bring your whole self to work and life, which is something I really believe we all need to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you say, like, a great set of words there, when you say you bring your whole self, what does that mean? Because we hear a lot of, and I'll frame this in a simple way, you hear a lot of this work-life balance and all these other words. What does whole self mean to you?
Well, first, I don't believe in balance. I think I'm very visual, Andrew. When I hear the word balance, I see scales and something always gives. So by integrating who you are, your values, your belief, the true you, and being the true you, because no one is you, that's your uniqueness, at work and at home, you shouldn't really be two different people. And I think, you know, I even know a few weeks ago I was working with a senior leadership team, and we did a bit of a really cool sort of icebreaker that was quite a vulnerable space. And he came out with something that no one in the team knew about him, and they'd worked together some of them 17 years. And to me, you know, that's a really good gauge. If there's something about you, and it doesn't have to be personal or something you're gloating about, it can just be something, you know, that you're bringing into your work and sharing with others, because it's bloody hard to not be yourself and try and act like someone else when that isn't congruent with who you are.
Yeah. It is interesting, isn't it? And I suspect had a similar thing the other week, a similar sort of conversation, and it was with a board, a not-for-profit board. And you could always see these people when those slightly more vulnerable conversations happen and people are quite transparent about their background, their story.
Yeah.
You'd see all these other people on the going, oh, that's probably explains why he or she does certain things. That's really interesting. Which is all about the gifts that vulnerability can bring.
That's you're spot on, and people love it. I mean, you know, it's the old saying, people remember how you make them feel, not what you say, not what you do.
Yeah.
And you'd know this too through your work. When you share a story, in my latest book, I didn't have any personal stories in there, and at the 11th hour, the editor said, I've got to know you, and you've got some pretty amazing, you know, resilient things you've been through. And people that have read my book, they're like, wow, thank you for sharing that. And I think sometimes it's actually selfish not to share your story, because people want that. And I think, you know, I don't want to talk about the pandemic, but it definitely has brought this to the surface more.
And especially Renee, I mean, travels all over the place, but is based in Melbourne. So you had the pointy end of the stick when it comes to lockdowns globally. I don't think it's a prize you want to win, but apparently you did.
We did. I think if the dictionary has the word lockdown, Melbourne might be in it.
Yeah, it's been updated, the Urban Dictionary at the very least. So your latest book, you talked about there, the story. Tell us about what's the latest book about, because I think it is deeply connected with the whole being better people and better business.
Definitely. So gift mindset it's the concept or the idea of a gift mindset I've lived probably consciously since I was about 23. So quite a few, I was going to say centuries ago.
Yeah, like back in 20 20s, yeah, good.
Yeah.
2010s. Yeah.
But I had quite a major thing happen, and I just thought, what is the gift in this? And I really do believe our challenges and our successes can teach us the most. When I first started talking about a gift mindset, it's probably 7 years ago. I've brought it into a lot of what we do with teams and leaders. And I had people going, wow, I even said to my daughter, what's the gift in that? And I thought, I'm onto something here. It's an easy concept to grasp, not always easy to do. But I think when we tap into become deeply aware and go, what did I learn from that? How can I use that to progress myself forward, and better still in the workplace and life, share that with others, because our lessons could be a survival guide for someone else. And when we deep dive into our lessons, we can learn a lot, but I've come up with 12 key areas, like 12 key soft skills that we can really deepen and develop when we're more aware of our gifts. And I'm a realist. When the pandemic hit and I started writing the book on the weekends, I was like, what is the gift in this? What am I doing? So sometimes our gifts, can be hidden. Sometimes we have to move through that challenge or that hard road to success to actually appreciate, what that means for us. And the thing with the book, Andrew, it's the market and the feedback. We've got leaders, we've got CEOs, we've got graduates, we've got unis, we've got schools. I've got clients' kids reading it. And that's what really lights me up and I actually get a bit emotional, because it's a message that I just want to get out there, that we can all access the gift mindset.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
And we'll put a link to where people can get hold of one in the show notes, I think is the right term to use.
Yes, that's right.
It's interesting, isn't it? The gift mindsets are, if we think about things, and I know you well enough to know this is the frame that you will hold. It's very much like we think individually and collectively inside our circle around when it comes to the gift. How does it apply to us, or how does it apply to people near us? I think the other thing I've learned in life around some of those gifts, some of those lessons, be it success or complexity, is also sometimes we don't really know. We never truly understand. The gift may not become as visible to us as we would have liked, but for somebody else, this is really impactful and useful. And how you hold that space of kind of going, well, this happened for a reason, and that's a choice. I think we both share. Stuff happens for a reason. We don't always understand it, but this is for somebody, to use your words. And I think it's powerful. This was a gift. I don't fully understand that, but I can sit with that. Okay.
You're spot on. I mean, gifts are about, goes back to ancient times, giving and receiving. And you're so right. I mean, sometimes we'll go through something and the gift could simply be someone showed up that supported you, and now you've got this amazing, deep and meaningful relationship that wouldn't have happened. I think, Andrew, my younger sister got diagnosed with breast cancer just before COVID, before the pandemic. And that was a tough, and it still is a tough one. But the gift for me is I am so grateful to be here and to be able to do the things that maybe she can't. And it puts things in perspective. And even who I work with, I'm very much about surrounding myself with people that, I'm not saying Pollyanna, but I am an optimist, people that see the good in things and people, because I think that's key. Unfortunately, in a workplace context, sharing our gifts does get stifled, and there's quite a few barriers. And the key ones I researched were, in a lot of cultures, there's no time. They don't make the time to share or become self-aware because they look at it as self-indulgent, or my team did something wrong or made a mistake. Why would I share that? Or on the flip side, we're the highest performing team. We don't really want to share how we did that, or we're not even aware of how we did that. So we've got to move through those sorts of barriers. I've even had leaders say, we won this award, but we don't really want to share how we did it because it looks like we're gloating. Judgment from others is a key barrier as well. But if you break that all aside, I sort of look at it like you're taking those tightly wrapped Christmas presents under the Christmas tree with all the gold inside, and you're moving up to a point where you're, revealing what's in that, and then you're limitless. And, limitless leaders, for me, the gift mindset's a key trait of that person or that organisation. Yeah.
So I think you've hit on a really powerful point there, where there's a lot of frames you used where people are less willing to talk about, be available, be a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then again, it's almost like the Christmas tree, to use your analogy, a Christmas tree full of presents underneath, but no one unwraps them.
No.
But gosh, look at all those lovely presents. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Or the other side of things, I think there's other organisations who have a tree full of amazingly wrapped presents, but it's a bit like the one in the Maya Centre where there's actually nothing inside.
That's right.
Conversation with teams when you work with them, and how do you get them to that place of actually, like, is there some mechanical stuff, or there's some process stuff? How do you actually get them to a place of having a real conversation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Not always easy, and it's an ongoing practice. But our model's really around taking the time to become deeply aware. So in a team context, we've created Win Wednesdays, Failure Fridays, Motivation Mondays, so they have platforms to share. Then it's around accepting. And, acceptance is a word that cops a lot of slack. And I say, when you accept something, even if it's not great, it doesn't mean you condone it. But when you can accept it, it can take you to a place to action those lessons. And we break apart the gift process, GIFT. So we've got questions around G, which is how have you grown? What's helped you grow? And then we go into the other steps. How can we integrate it? That's the I. So the G and the I questioning is all about sort of you. And then the F is how can we facilitate that in a forum? And T is how will that transform? So it's quite an easy process on paper, but we get teams to really, have a look at that and then go, out of these 12 key soft skills or the 12 gifts, what ones, have we deepened and developed? So I know for me through the pandemic, the gift of gratitude, the gift of resilience, and the gift of growth, I was always quite strong in those, but that's next level now for me. And it's something, like you said before, there's no ceiling. There's going to be other curveballs thrown at both of us and everyone listening.
Yeah.
But anything you've done before, you can do again. So it's tapping into those reserves and having that emotional intelligence to bring that to life.
And I'm assuming part of the work you're doing with people is helping them to develop those things, but a big part of it is making sure that they keep a level of reserves available. So when stuff is a little more heavy, a little more heady, a little more problematic, they can draw from the pool, not just turn into the pool and it's dry, which is a dangerous place to be.
It is. And I think, when I started, not many people know this, but when I wrote the book in 12 weekends. So I channeled the book. It was just there. And obviously we did interviews and all that sort of stuff. But the gift mindset was more about just challenges. And then I went, you know what? Most successes have such a hard story and a hard slog behind them as well. So that's where we brought both in. And the 4 drivers, Andrew, of a gift mindset are, I call them pass the parcel. So challenging situations. So pandemic. Kris Kringle's, challenging people. So you ask for aftershave and you get socks. And then I say we have the gift vouchers and the gift registry, which give us choice about the positive experiences and the positive people we bring into our lives. So I always say to people, what have you been through? Is it a Kris Kringle? What sort of gift is it? So you know what the driver is to then tap in and sort of unwrap, I say, unwrap what happened and how can we, tap into that reserve.
That's powerful. I think there's a beautiful metaphor there for people. If you didn't quite listen very well, hit rewind to about 30 seconds to listen to that again. It's very much worthwhile around the whole parcel Kris Kringle's gift registry, just to think, a process to think through, which I suspect most people comfortable with in those sorts of words. We've all had the Chris Kringle where we get that present, we go, really? Wow, great. Have you got
Well,
a
they
receipt?
teach us the most. I had a Chris Kringle manager. I can actually say I've only had one, and I am so grateful to him because at the time I started investigating like coaching and NLP and neuroscience, and he ended up leaving the business and whatever. But if I hadn't had that experience, you know, and not saying anything's wrong with staying in the corporate world, but I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I think the difficult people, those Chris Kringle people, can teach us the most about ourselves too.
Yeah, it's and I think it's a lot of wisdom there, which I assume inside the programs you run too. It's being able to process that, and as you said, what's the gift?
Yeah,
you know, that whole conversation. So this is really painful. I don't enjoy this. Sometimes I don't even necessarily enjoy that person. And what's the work here? What's the gift? What do I need to understand in here? What do I need to do to be a bit better than I was yesterday?
You spot. And it's also too, in the better frame, you know, I know with that leader, I remember writing down everything he did and was and who he was being, and said, I will do the opposite of that. So it actually created this awesome list of who do I need to be better. So
yeah, it's pretty powerful. There's a word, we had a chat about this before we jumped online, and I think we've used the word set twice now. Soft skills. And it's an interesting word, isn't it? Because it seems to be fueled with a whole bunch of people either like it, dislike it. And it's often, I know, so a lot of the work we do is with the heavy industry, you know, high risk type world, and soft skills are often forgotten, but it's all about the technical skills. It's all about, you know, safe skills. Like it's all around how do I do my job in the technical sense. I'm just really interested for your take on soft skills. And I'll use the old bunny ears because I think because they're often the most overlooked gifts or the opportunities to develop gifts, and they're also often the hardest things to do well.
That's the irony. Soft skills are hard, right? Just reflecting on this. So I call them life skills, real skills, and then people go, what do you mean? And it's soft skills. So I think and I work with a lot of teams that are technically brilliant, but technical brilliance, skill and know-how isn't enough anymore. It never has been. And I think the soft skill part is the people part. It's, you know, things like empathy, gratitude, the great resignation. I call it the great rejuvenation. I think it's an awesome thing that's happening. I think it's always been there. Is really, I think, it's come to the surface around that people need this, and I think it's the third top reason people are moving on is they're not feeling appreciated or recognised. It's gratitude. So, you know, who and what are you grateful for is how I kick off all my workshops, and it gets everybody in a forward-thinking frame of mind. So if you've got those awfulizers in the room that tend to go back to problem solving, which nothing wrong with that, but when you're trying for progress, moving forward, future thinking, you need to be looking at that. But yeah, I'm a big believer that we all have access to soft skills, but we've got to, and you probably see this too, you've got to want to upskill in those areas. And I think some people perceive soft skills as sitting around woo-woo land, energies, all this sort of thing. What that will give you moving forward is it will stop us from being human doings and be human beings, which is what we are.
Yeah, powerful. And it is, yes, I think it's one of the most, if organizations aren't thinking about how they are developing soft skills, and if we think about some of them, simple things, even just like communication, how you have a better conversation is, and it's everywhere, and people will say, oh yes, those darn Gen Zs and Gen Ys. You go, it's not just that. It's everybody, every level. It is.
I I think that's a bit of a cop out, and I think it's really around going. We all do these soft skills, but we just need to be more aware. And I think especially now, teams seeing a lot of this, especially the last 2 months. People in teams are really opening up and being really vulnerable, which I think is great. But there's a lot of leaders I know that are calling me, going, I don't know how to deal with this. They're telling me everything. They never used to do that. So I actually don't think, especially in a leadership position, you have a choice not to grow these skills. And now is a gift as far as time to do that. Now is the time to do that.
Yeah. It's it's just so many conversations going, oh yes. And it is an interesting piece, isn't it, when we think about, what leadership's constantly changing, and some of this is also, I think, in a frame, some of this is management too. Because inside of this and all of this, we still have to get the job done.
That's right.
And it isn't. So for some people out there kind of going, well, we can't sit around all day just talking. No, unless that's the work. But if you don't invest any time in talking, you're gonna. And I think it's. I'm sure this is a conversation you've had many times, Renee. It's like those people who ring up and say, "Hey, I want to build a culture in the business. I want to build a good culture. I want to build a culture." And you go, "Well, so there's already a culture there."
Yeah, that's right.
What do you mean? Your culture happens all the time.
People,
yeah. So again, I'm not going to get down a path of what's a culture. I was talking to Shane Hatton the other day, and we had an interesting chat about that. One of your friends as well. But there is this conversation around, I think, the conversation you're having here is around leadership and soft skills. They're already there, but no one's giving it the time or energy to be developed usefully and to be better at it.
You just got to water. I look at them a bit like seeds. They're there, they've sprouted, they can't not, or there's no such thing as human behaviour. But you got to water them. And look, for me, culture is the essence of an organisation. If you could bottle the essence, and it comes from the people, and it takes time, and it's shared values and beliefs of a community. Doesn't mean you have to agree with each other, but it's shared. You understand why things are the way they are. And you're right. I've been called in a few times. We've got 2 hours. Could you come and change the culture? And it's
come and fix it.
Get a comedian. You'll get more out of that in 2 hours. It takes time. And I think the biggest tip I could give anyone is know and grow your people. Understand your people. Understand what lights them up. If it was my last day on earth, Andrew, and we were doing this, that's my advice, is do what lights you up and understand what lights other people up, because motivation is 65% of the puzzle. When we do what lights us up, we're naturally energized. We have a pep in our step, and that's contagious. It's an energy. And we all know, Sunday night, like I was so excited for this to kick off the week. It sets the tone for the week. So I always say, it's as simple as knowing your favourite thing, doing that Monday morning, and know what your team's is. Don't manage it, satisfy it, and help them drive that satisfaction to fulfil that.
Powerful. Really powerful words. I think there's another little rewind, press play again. 30 second, hit that 30-second rewind. So the other word that you use a lot, like it's obviously on the banner behind you there as well, and it's in all your material, and when I knew you, it was part of absolutely how you talk. Limitless. Tell us about limitless. I know we talked a little bit at the start, but I think there's just a lot of gold here for people to be able to listen to.
Yeah, I think limitless is almost a mindset, but I think it's saying to yourself, there's no ceiling. What's next? How can I, into your words, Andrew, be continually better, whatever that is for you, not someone else for you. I think that's important. And I think it's about taking stock and not just doing things the way things have always been done. So challenging the status quo, like I said, unlearning. So going, what if I didn't do that way and I had a different viewpoint, and then relearning it? We've had to relearn life, right, since the pandemic in many ways.
Yep.
But we were forced, that's a forced change we had. And I think limitless leaders and teams for me are the ones that seek out that chosen change to continually question the status quo. I'd love to share with you. I still don't know where this is from. I might just own it because I can't find it anymore.
Yes.
But there was
Here's an original.
Yeah, well, I can't find it anywhere, and I've told this story for years. And my husband said to me the other, because I'm a bit of a creator, a content machine, and he goes, "I actually think this was your thing." But anyway, so there was a lady that used to make a lamb roast for her family, the old traditional Australian way every Sunday night.
Yep.
And her husband said to her, "Why do we always have to cut the leg of lamb in half?" And she said, "I don't know. I've always done it like that." So she rings her sister. "I don't know, ring mum." She rings her mum. "Mum, why do we always cut the leg of lamb in half?" She goes, "Done it since you were kids, ring your nana." So she rings the nana. "Nana, why do we cut the leg of lamb in half?" And the nana says, "Shit, I don't know. I just had a small oven." And I just think it's such a good little metaphor, analogy around we can get caught up doing things the way we've always done them without even consciously being aware. Don't over question things. Don't be that person, but that's the gift of curiosity into your life every day. So people say, how do you become curious, Renee? And my number one tip is we always think in statements. So I think Andrew is amazing. That goes nowhere. What makes Andrew amazing? Then you're observing, you're provocating, and you're questioning, and that's the only way you can learn and unlearn. So in teams, on your own, I unwrap that gift of curiosity, because it's the portal to me in possibility and new learning.
Yeah, it's powerful. And when you talk about, and I don't want to understate this, I think it's really important, the whole learn, unlearn, relearn, that can be hard work.
Oh, yeah. It can.
And I think this is a piece where just a conversation for people out there who, if they're finding it hard, that's okay. Be a little bit kind to yourself, because this is really hard work.
It is.
And the bigger the relearn, unlearn, and the learn, unlearn, and relearn, the unlearn, relearn bit, the bigger that is, the more at the core of who we are it is, the harder the work is. Is that a fair comment?
Oh, totally, because you're challenging what you know. You're challenging the status quo. I'm like, I think you are, Andrew. I'm a big reader. I read a book a week at night, have for years, even though I will admit the last 3 months I'm read out. But what I do is I always, if there's anything in there I love and I agree with, I go tick. If there's anything I go, you know what, I'm going to try that or bring that into something. I'm going to unlearn something I've done. So my advice would be just to look at something you've done for a while and just check in. Is there a better way? Is there one thing you could do differently or better to have a different outcome, or make that journey a bit different to get to the same outcome? Life's short. 90,000 hours we spend at work, they say. So mix it up, have a bit of fun, and I think it's a good way to keep you on your toes, and your team if you're leading a team.
And as you are going through that process of unlearn, relearn, as I said, the kindness aspect to self and others, I think also just be mindful of just how much change you can handle.
Oh, that's a good point. Change fatigue.
And for those anywhere in the world, change has been pretty it's been very much in our face the last X amount of years.
Yeah.
As we talked earlier, that sort of comment about Melbourne, and I was down there recently and actually got to see you amongst a bunch of other folk, which was really cool.
That was a great night.
Lovely dinner, but it was really interesting for me. And I can talk about this relearn and learn, and it's a slightly different frame, but it was still really impactful. So here I am, the flunky from Brisbane, coming down and kind of sent a note and said, "Hey, anyone want to have some dinner?" And 3 or 4 people turned into 16. And one of the common, which is great, and it was a lot of fun, but one of the common conversations I had with people there was, we've kind of forgotten we can do this.
Yeah.
because we had to learn a different way because you're in, it was not a choice. You were in lockdown.
Lockdown.
You were
Yeah.
in prison down in Melbourne. You were locked
Yeah.
up. That's probably not a fair paradigm, but you were shut in. And this whole piece where it's like people going, well, my comment to a lot of people, you can do this anytime you want.
Yeah.
You're not there anymore. But that unlearning is, or looking for those to unlearn stuff. We've got to be vigilant all the time because they're all around us. And sometimes the things I've learned, and for that conversation, the reason for the example is sometimes it can take an outside influence. Like for you read the book,
make it happen,
that needs you to trigger it, and you go, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
What choices am I making every day that give me to this place that I don't really want to be in anymore?
Spot on. I think I love that example because, I'm a connector. I love people. The minute lockdown wasn't lockdown, I was out that night, right? And we're running probably 70% of stuff face-to-face. I still know a lot in our circle, Andrew, that are happy doing virtual and they've realised they like that. A lot of people have realised they're more introverted than they thought they ever were. If it works for them, that's fine. But I think it's this ongoing check-in. And I have clients keep what I call a progress journal. Progress is a motivator for everybody. So instead of waiting, especially sales team, end of the quarter, end of the month, daily progress, and I get them to track what have I learned and what's something that I could unlearn and do a different way.
Yeah, nice.
2 questions, and it brings that whole, which, if you're there feeling a bit brain fried right now listening to this, we've done our job because it's getting you to think differently. But what's something I've done? What result did I get? And if I could do that again, or I am doing it again, what's something that I can unlearn? So think of a behaviour, something tangible, and do it a different way. Yeah,
it's pretty powerful. I think we talk about, there's a couple of things there. If you aren't journaling, spending time with and I mean, go old school, pen and paper. There's a whole lot of science. People often talk about using digital or otherwise. I'm not going to challenge it, but there is a lot of science out there that's showing that the whole scribble effect is deeply connected with how we recall and remember things and how it gets truly layered into our unconscious as well as our conscious. But if you're not journaling, it's something that you should start.
Yeah.
And I think what Renee just offered everybody is a really interesting. If you just today and every day forward simply looked at what you're really grateful for, if I use a piece you talked about a while back, the gratitude piece, and if you also took a moment to think about, to use a couple of different words you had, if you also, like 2 sections, 1, what am I grateful for? 2, what gifts have I been given that might provide an opportunity to do some unlearning and relearning? Because there is, I know another friend of ours, Dan Collins, and Dan every night has gratitude, but he also talks about he writes about what lesson he learned today. Which is the same type of frame. What did I learn?
The gift mindset is the lesson mindset, really. What is the gift in it? And my mum always said to me growing up, what's the best thing that's happened today and what's something new that you've learnt? And I used to, I was the grunting teenager, so she knew she'd get nothing out of me if she said how was school. I wasn't a good school person.
Too many people to talk to and too much fun to be had.
Yeah, I think that was on every one of my school reports. But the interesting thing with that is, though, that's something to ask yourself. Even if you don't journal it, everyone's different. I tend now to get into bed and go, what did I learn today? And we learn a million things, but it could be I've learned that's not the sort of client I want to work with, or I've learned that I can actually do this in a different way. And I think, the best thing that's happened today, there's always something. And I know I'm sounding a bit Pollyanna, and, Australia is known as the Pollyanna sort of country across the world, but optimism, hope for now and the future, is one of the top 6 traits of leadership. So just finding out, it could be I made a difference, that's what lights me up to do. I've made a difference to someone, or I've seen someone actually hit a wall and have a breakthrough, which to me is just magical,
Yep.
Not for them at the time, but afterwards.
Yeah, the reflective state, and it
Yeah.
and it is, the limitless leader, I'm sure, is also captures this frame of we're not saying every leader must have every answer.
No, not at all.
That is a
No.
rare and unusual thing, and often really unhelpful, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I remember, and I've talked about this to different people at different times, but my daughter worked at the Apple store when she was going through uni.
Yeah.
And they got a pretty good training program. And the heart of it that I love, the one conversational frame they gave the Apple employees when they couldn't answer a question, which I think was really powerful. And it was, so someone comes in, my iPhone, whatever, and the simple conversation was, look, that's a great question. How about we find out that answer together? And as a limitless leader, I would offer this. I suspect it's in how you talk to people. You don't have to know everything, but you can explore stuff together. The limitless leader is willing to go to those places and realize that they can learn as much as the individual who might have the question or the challenge with them.
I love that. And it's when you learn with somebody, we know this, when we co-create, we have more buy-in anyway. I always say a limitless leader has, strong commitment, clear communication, and deep connection. They're sort of the 3 C's. And as well as I do, Andrew, leadership's a bit of a buzzword. For me, leadership, there's so many things under it, but leadership to me is doing the head work and the heart work. And I do a lot around M-braining, so head, heart, intuition.
Yeah, nice.
Bringing those 3 in. And I think it goes back to my childhood favourite movie and book, which it still is The Wizard of Oz.
It was the shoes, wasn't it? It was the shoes.
The shoes were part of it. And I have something to show you. This is going a bit off tangent, but we've only recently found this.
So if you're not watching the video, you should be, because here we go.
If you're not watching the video, I will visually explain it. So my heritage is Italian, and my grandparents, they were in the middle of the war, 1943, and my grandma was a seamstress for the opera. They were quite well off. They had a palazzo and everything in Sicily. Yeah. My grandpa owned a tannery, and he was a shoemaker. So I blame that for my 92 pairs of size 5 shoes. I love shoes. Anyway, they ended up coming to Australia, Rup of all places, because after the war, nothing was the same. There were cheap imports, and my grandfather was quite a proud man, and he did his own business in Australia. Recently, we've found this little bit of glass that was projected onto the cinemas in the mid-40s. Of his business, and I'm going to hold it up, and you'll appreciate this. It's teal, which is my branding colour. That wasn't a branding colour in the 40s, so he did that himself. But check out I've actually got those little green shoes, and now his shoe shop that didn't get ruined in the war is a famous bookstore.
There you go.
And books, shoes, people, and food are my favourite 4 things. So. Interesting.
It's something somewhat epigenetic. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but isn't it interesting? The things from our past that continue to echo through to the future.
Yeah, but I think, look, at the end of the day, I think, remind yourself why, I always say this, why you're doing what you do. And if you're not feeling your heart's in it as much, what needs to change. Don't just lead from the head and go, because you'll be good at your job, but you probably won't be fulfilled and happy.
And it sounds like for your granddad, like when the change happened post-war, he was mindful enough that his heart wasn't in it. His heart was still in it, but the head said, this isn't going to work here anymore, so how do we do life a bit differently?
And very differently. Like I write about that story under the gift of courage, because, they brought 6 children out on the boat. 2 died of bronchitis on the boat trip. My dad was 2 when he came out, and then they had a very different life in Australia because they had to sell everything, and they were quite not well off here at all. But how things happen and make, trigger us to make decisions that are life-changing for so many people.
And his limitless leadership does open the door of there will be some stuff that comes through that door that will be less comfortable.
Spot on.
And I guess that's part of the work, that some of the work you do with teams, with individuals, and inside whole of organizations, because ultimately it's one people's, groups of people's, lots of people's.
Spot on.
If you need help with that world in understanding just what limitless might look like, and also I think that the conversation, the work you're now doing around gift is really powerful for companies, especially on the back of the mess that just happened. And we talk about it as if it's I think sometimes we give it too much kudos or credence, but nonetheless, it was this compressed tension state of change, 10 years in 2 years type frame. And it just caused so much change that had to happen, as we said. But on the other side of it, how do we unwrap that and explore the gifts and do life a little differently and a little better? As you said, the great resignation, the great, what was your frame? The great rejuvenation, where people can and are kind of going, I'm not sure if that works for me anymore. And we're seeing it, and there's in every phase, like being a Brisbane person, and I say this with love, the amount of Mexicans flooding north is just fascinating.
Yeah, a few of my Mexican friends are up there.
And for those people who don't know us, we often talk about that in the American frame of Victoria being down in that sort of middle America space. But it is amazing how many people have finally gone, I'm done, I'm moving, I'm changing. And some of them now, though, are also going to go, I'm going back because this isn't like...
I've seen a bit of that. We're reevaluating things. It's a shake-up, and I think it's a deeper connection to what individually we want and need. And I mean, we've made some changes in our business. We've dropped some things. We've brought some other things in. And, I think, as you know, Andrew, your business has got to continue. Like we've got new programs every year. We're continually evolving, because as a person, I'm evolving and learning more. And, I think staying relevant is really key in whatever role you're in, listening or watching this. Go back to, why do I do what I do? What gets me out of bed in the morning? And money isn't the answer. That's not sustainable. It's obtainable. What gets me out of bed? Is it people? Is it customer? Is it, detail? What is it for you? And knowing what that is, and I believe bringing that in 70% of the time is roughly all the research I've done. You'll be on the right path.
It's that another frame that both of us have heard from another organisation, the whole ideology of work we like, the people we like, the way we like.
Oh, yeah.
If at the first instance, if you can be thinking about what does that mean to you? Please don't, I guess this is something that you and I have done because we've stepped out of corporate space to do the work we do, because we want to do, I'll go a little further. I suspect we're probably in that bucket of work we love, the way we love, the people we love. But that's even for a start, if you're out there listening, everything Renee has shared with you, that limitless and the gifts, another frame would be just think about the work you're doing right now, and don't be limited.
No.
We get stuck in a rut, and ruts are an interesting beast. So tracks are really helpful because it makes running smoother. Ruts are problematic because they're really difficult to get out of. And it's worth asking the question, am I still here? Am I still here? Is this still what I want to do? Is this work I like, but people like the way I like?
I love that. And it's a good check-in, and it can sometimes be confronting, but it's making those small changes. And you're right, you don't have to leave corporate and go and do what we're doing. I know a lot of, and I was very happy in corporate when I was there. So it's about how can you be in service to yourself and know why you do what you do, then you'll be in service to others at a much deeper level. Yeah,
it's look, beautiful. That another little idiom that I certainly forget all the time, and I need to remind myself of. Serving self is not self-serving.
No, spot on.
So it's a pretty powerful piece. And as you just said, if you're not serving self, you can never serve others as well as you potentially could.
No.
So much power. That's brilliant. I know one of the other things I do at the very end, and thank you very much for that conversation. I'm sure people are loving it. You kind of went there early on the spoiler alarm, but I'm going to go there anyway. Which is often say if there was one thing, because at the end of it, people are often kind of going, man, that was a lot. And again, feel free to replay and re-listen, and feel free to please chase any of Renee's work down, but if there was one thing you wanted to leave everybody with, and you've already given us one thing about 20 minutes ago, what is that thing? What do you want people if they could just take away one thing from you as a gift?
I think we're all limitless. We just need to take the time to realize and achieve what's possible. So not just realize it, but achieve it. And if you're thinking about it and you're thinking about it and it keeps you up at night, to me, it's the best sign that you need to pursue whatever that is.
And if you need help with that, Renee is out there. As I said, we'll put some information about Renee and her world in the show notes. She's got a couple of cracking books. She also runs a bunch of programs, helps people, as I said, individually or in groups, small and large.
Yep.
And if you are stuck in the space of how does my team, how does my organization think in a more limitless way? How do we think about gifts in a way that allows us to continue to grow our limitless potential? Here's the person to talk to. So it's been an absolute pleasure.
Amazing. Thanks, Andrew.
Yes. No,
Love
that's
this
great.
chat.
Yes, and it's people, so that we'll get that off you, but is there any other particular places? ReneeGiarrusso.com?
Yeah, ReneeGiarrusso.com gives you an outline of everything we do and all our blogs and everything, but giftmindset.com, the book has its own website. Beautiful. And we've got the 12 gifts down, all free, downloadable posters, resources, habit trackers, nice. And the book is on audio too. So there's a whole audio workbook free of charge on giftmindset.com as well.
That sounds like some cracking resources that are an absolute gift. Yeah, boom, boom. But amazing. Thank you again, Renee.
Thank you.
And for everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this. One of the things that I heard through that whole piece was, and at the very end, the wrap up, you are truly limitless. Get after it. And let's see what, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be as small as it needs to be, but start the work today.
Definitely.
Thank you, Renee. And
thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening in. Have a cracking week.